Hello friends, it's Kayla. Welcome back to my channel. Welcome back to my Accidentally Humongous Hair. Today we're doing my quarterly wrap up where I tell you everything that I read, all of my statistics, promote some old videos, and tell you some of my favorites. I read 82 books, I think, this last quarter, and if we were to divide it into ratings, my highest slices of pie would be 4 and 3 stars, which are pretty identical. And then the next biggest one would be 5 stars, and then a handful of 2 and 1 stars. This feels like a pretty typical reading quarter for me. I know we started out the year really good with my 5-star slice being the biggest, like the first half of the year. And now things have leveled out again, and I like a lot of things. Like there were 15 5 stars, but it's definitely a mix again of everything across the board. What else? What else? Where did these books come from? 20 of them came from the library. 30 of them I bought brand new. 15 were off of my TBR, so like backlist things I've owned for a while, though 5 of those were rereads. And then 8 things were thrifted and 3 books were sent to me that I read. And the split of 2022 releases to anything earlier is pretty even, which I think is new for me. I think that's typical at the end of the year because I'm catching up on a lot of new releases I haven't read yet, or a lot of things come out in the fall winter season that I want to read. So I think it was like perfectly in half. And then if we take a look at genres, my highest one was romance for reasons. The next highest one was horror, also for video reasons. And then I had like 11 contemporary reads, 5 thrillers, 5 fantasy, and a handful of other things like sci-fi and anthologies, nonfiction, and whatever else. If we look at the month specifically, here's the issue with this quarter, is I didn't read all of the romance in this quarter because I started reading them in summertime, but I didn't include them in any wrap-ups or quarterly updates until now because I was keeping my romance vlog series a secret. So I'm including all of the romance books in these statistics. But when I take my end of month photo, like here's the one for October, this is the one for November, this is the one for December, but November and October would have some of the romance sprinkled in there. So I don't actually technically know how many books I've read in each respective month, technically, because there's a 4th photo that I just took of all the romance that I had been reading. So those are the stats, and then section 2 of the video is talking about the videos and my standout favorites from each of the videos or video series that I did. So I can't hold all of the romance reasonably, can I? No! So the most amount of books I read for one video series was 29 romance books for a 5 video series. The standouts from here: Fool Me Once by Ashley Winstead. I really loved Sweet Hand by N.G. Peltier. The Wedding Crasher by Mia Sosa. Always Only You by Chloe Leese. The Bodyguard by Catherine Center. Honey and Spice by Bolu Babalola. 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. And Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. The next most amount of books I read in a video was for the Goodreads horror vlog. I think I read 11. There's 10 here, so that means something's missing or I can't count. Who knows? The standouts from that video were House of Hunger by Alexis Henderson, We Spread by Ian Reid, and The Cherry Robbers by Saray Walker. Next, I read 6 books in my Halloween video, which was the week leading up to Halloween. And the standouts from here were my reread of The House at the Bottom of the Lake by Josh Mallerman, and then the anthology Queer Little Nightmares, and You're Invited by Amanda Giatissa. I also read 6 books in a video all about reading from my favorite authors, like ones that I hadn't read full-length novels from before. And then I also read some short stories from my favorite short story authors. Nothing here was 5 stars, so the standout would be Silver Under Nightfall by Rin Chapeko. I also did an episode of rereading childhood favorites. It was 11th grade this season, or this quarter, and I read 6 books. I can't find the 6th one. I think it was 6, it might have been 7. But the best ones from here were my rereads of Lord of the Flies and The Long Walk. I also did a Third Time's a Charm episode. Actually, I did 2 Third Time's a Charm episodes, one for sci-fi fantasy, one for things that couldn't be categorized. I didn't give any 5 stars here, but the standout would be Rosewater by Ted A. Thompson. And then this episode was a real win because I liked everything. The stands out being Galatea by Madeline Miller and Men We Reap by Jesmyn Ward. I also did a vlog where I read books with titles inspired by my favorite songs, and I read these three. The standouts were Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey. Am I getting sick? And Glory by Violet Bulawayo. I also did one vlog where Instagram chose what I read, and in it I read Part of the Violence and then Such Sharp Teeth. And then I also read Daphne, which was my favorite from that vlog by Josh Mallerman. And finally, the stack that I read just on my own time and didn't vlog. I think the standouts here would be A Minor Chorus by Billy Ray Belcourt, Alice's Island by Daniel Sanchez Arevalo, and then Jackal by Erin E. Adams. But then almost everything else was 4 stars. So I feel really good about the quarter that I had. And then lastly, let's just cover my 5 favorites. I hesitate because there are so many that I want to include. Obviously, because there was like 15 of them, it's hard to narrow it down, but I did. And they're all kind of different genres, so that's fun. First up is Honey and Spice by Bolu Babalola. This was my favorite romance. It is like a college age romance. You might call it new adult. It's low in steam. Just the love and safety and warmth that I felt from these characters and their relationship. It was really lovely. So we have Kiki, who hosts this like radio show podcast, and she has to work with this guy who she doesn't really like. She's kind of talked shit about, and now he wants to fix his reputation, and she wants to prove to this guy that she was involved with that she's not really into him. So they both have their own motivations for getting into this fake relationship. But of course it turns from fake relationship to real relationship. You go through each of their minds and their feelings and their own personal like struggles and thoughts, and them falling for each other at different times and different speeds. And I just thought it was really lovely. Then my favorite horror of the season was We Spread by Ian Reid, which is about this older woman who goes into a senior home care facility, but it's very small, it's private, there's only a couple people there, and she doesn't really remember agreeing to go. She gets whisked away, but they all tell her that this is where she's supposed to be, this is the place she chose. Her and her partner set this up for her, but rather quickly she starts to question if it's safe for her and if everything around her is what it seems. There's kind of a sinister tone going on, but it's like, can she trust her own memory? Because the whole point is she can't trust herself. That's why she's here. She needs people to help take care of her. So when she's questioning everything going on around her and people start to say weird things and she thinks there's something odd about this place, are they actually taking advantage of her? Is something weird going on? Or is it just that she is going through something mentally that makes her not be able to trust herself? Just a big question mark throughout it. Very ominous, slow vibes. Then my favorite nonfiction of the quarter is Men We Reaped by Jesmyn Ward. Honestly, if a book's gonna make me cry, it's gonna end up on this list because it doesn't happen very often. This is a memoir by this author telling the story of her childhood in rural Mississippi, but mainly focused on these 5 different men who died in a short time period in her life. The book is extremely atmospheric and visceral and feels like it has been fictionalized, so it makes it really compelling to pick up and continue with. It sheds light on a lot of things happening in her community, societal things just in general. It talks about poverty and drug abuse and alcoholism and just like cycles of poverty and violence, and remains a really strong tribute to these men and the lives that they lived. It's told in a really interesting way because you get insertions of her life between these stories of these men, but it's also told in a non-linear way, and she explains that at the beginning, that to tell the story she has to start at the end. I just thought it was extremely well crafted and really pulled at my emotions. It's just such a good balance of talking about topics she wants to talk about and education in a certain sense, but then also just personal anecdotes from her life and these people that she knew. Then we've got a general fiction contemporary story, Once There Were Wolves by Charlotte McConaughey. It's also a near future story. So this woman is involved in biology and saving these wild wolves, and she brings them into the Scottish Highlands to try to introduce them back into the environment. And so she moves to this small town with her twin sister, who is dealing with a lot of inner turmoil of her own. In this small town, she's like connecting with the other scientists, but she's also getting to know the people who live in the small town. So many people don't want them there because their livelihood depends on their livestock, and they're worried that these wolves are going to potentially kill their animals. And that feeling comes to the forefront because there's actually a man who dies in town and everybody thinks it's the wolves. Our main character, Inti, has to defend the wolves, prove that they didn't do it. There's a lot more going on. There's romance that happens. There's obviously like a mystery happening. And then we also get flashbacks to their life before. It was just really slow and beautifully told, and I liked it a lot. This one is kind of similar. I would actually recommend it for fans of this because I don't want it to end up, I don't want to say like the wrong hands, because I myself am a thriller mystery reader, but if you just call Alice's Island a mystery novel, a thriller novel, I don't know that that's setting it up the right way. This is by Daniel Sanchez Arevalo, and it is like a women's fiction kind of story, I'll call it that, so it gets to the right audience. If you like reading about a woman starting over, starting a new life, moving to a small town and just getting to know her neighbors, making a life for herself and her children, and then you also like a little bit of a mystery plot, I would highly recommend this. The mystery involved in here is her husband died really suddenly, and it's not about solving his death because we know what happened. She knows what happened, but he wasn't where he said he was. She's currently pregnant. She has a young daughter. Her husband and her had the perfect relationship in her mind. She can't imagine him ever keeping anything from her. So when she finds out that he has been visiting this island, she decides to go there and find out if anybody knew of him. The places he might have visited, she goes and she's checking like security cameras, and it's a story of obsession. She eventually integrates herself into this small town, into this community, makes all of these friends, but she is, you know, secretly looking into them deeper, looking through their things, trying to figure out what her husband's secrets were before he died. It's not full of like big twists and turns and reveals. It's not over the top and ridiculous. It's slow and it's sad, but it's also really beautiful. And there are things to learn by the end of the story, and it hurts. And I just really, really appreciated it, and I want more people to pick it up. So that's what I would consider my 5 favorites. I have not decided my top 10 of the year, like at all. So I'd be interested to know myself if any of these are going to make it in there, or if any of my favorites and which favorites from which quarters are going to make it in. I don't know if you want to put your guesses down below. I'm currently in my week of rereads, so I'm revisiting a lot of my 5-star favorites, seeing if they hold up, reading certain passages and trying to solidify everything for myself. So I'll link down below all of my other quarterly updates in case you want to check them out before my big like wrap up at the end of the year where I talk about everything and all my stats, which how am I going to film that in one day? No idea. But I will see you tomorrow with something new. Is it going to be my favorites video? I'm not quite sure. I am almost done with all of my rereading I wanted to do, so maybe it will be. Either way, I'll see you tomorrow.